No!
Feminists are sexist!
All feminists are sexist!
All women are sexist! All women are sexist! All women are
I've seen it! This is the true evil! This is the true evil! Please don't assault me!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
I am sick of being a baby factory that produces more men that will just, in the future, subjugate me. We want the species to go on, but we want it only to go on with women in it. So that's what we have to do. That's the only way to keep the human race going is with just women.
There is one thing about this apology, however, that I've got to tell you.
He takes it seriously. The ONS figures come from broad church sort of averages across the workforce, and when you take into account the different choices women make, whether or not you include children in there.
Shut the fuck up for a second!
Ladies' man with frosted tips to capture the hearts of Australians. But Shane Warne is a bit of a bitch, let's be honest, and outside of this little island, in the real world where I live in America, nobody knows what cricket is. Now, some of you know I live in Miami, and the president is a feisty redhead. Thank you. It starts with the early adopters who are sort of over-enthusiastic, and then the smart people who've actually read my columns chip in. Thank you. Daddy. Just kidding. Thank you for that. It's remarkable about him. He can provoke chants like that in Australia, where it's not even the same day as the rest of the world. I said that a few nights ago, and somebody said, yeah, we're living in the future. I'm a nice person, so I let it go. I was going to say I've been to Perth. Anyway, our president, redheaded, skeptical of Islam, wants a burqa ban, sound on immigration, hated, all right, love, hated by the left. It's almost like Pauline is in the Oval Office. Speaking, by the way, of gingers.
Hey, Milo, you can't hide! All those Nazis on your side!
I understand you call them rangers. Apparently that's a bad word. I got into trouble when I arrived in Australia for my judiciously chosen comments about Julia Gillard. I said, and this is important, this is not a laughing matter. It's not a laughing matter. I said, and I quote, that I thought she was a bit of a prick. Now, the Sydney Morning Herald was very upset with me. Various other left-wing outlets have condemned my coarse language, so I would like to set the record straight and apologize to pricks for the unflattering comparison. Now, there's one final redhead that I'm unlikely to make friends with on this trip. This is Clementine Ford. Give them a round of applause. Ironically, that's what I hear when Clementine starts speaking. It's a sort of high-pitched, mildly irritating, but basically pointless and ineffective noise. It's probably the worst protest I've ever had. It was like a fire alarm going off in a different state. I can clap more disruptively than that. Good Lord. Now, back to dear Clementine. In her native tongue, of course, her name is... Back in the realms of man, she's known as Clementine Ford Explorer. But the car manufacturer's lawyers have asked me to clarify that the rear end of their SUVs are considerably lighter and smaller. Now, I'm a lovely person. I'm a compassionate person. I'm a sweet, decent person. So I wanted to know when I came to Australia what had driven poor Clementine into the terrible state that we see before us these days. What childhood trauma, what horrible affliction had she been born with that left us with the gruesome, gargoylic apparition we now see in front of us. And then I discovered she was born in Queensland. And my mystification turned to pity and sorrow. Now, apparently, this human lump of half-melted butter has children. A triumph of the turkey-baster's art. As you can see from this lovely image, suggestions from right-wing shock jocks like Rush Limbaugh that feminism is just how ugly women elbow their way into public life are entirely without merit. And in fact, if it weren't for the hateful internet postings of cishet white patriarchal bastards like you, I'm quite sure Clementine would be an astrophysicist by now. A marine biologist, perhaps. A Nobel laureate, instead of a fat cunt on Twitter. Now, we should be nice. We should be nice. We should remember always to be compassionate, because we're nice people. Acknowledge that Clementine is a fighter. She's been fighting love handles her whole life. Now, sadly, the love handles are winning, but they do go well with her cloven hooves.
We must move on. We must move. I don't like to dwell on the mean things, because I'm a nice person. I'm a sweet person. I'm a loving person. But I do it because for decades the progressive left has hurled insults at you. They've called you racist. They've called you sexist. They call me those things too. They even call me, what do they call me? They call me homophobic, transphobic, white nationalist, pedophile apologist. Well, let me set the record straight. Only transphobic is true. Because aren't we all, really? But they've been doing this for a long time, and you see, the thing is, if someone in this room, and I'm sure none of you would do this, but let's say, for instance, that accidentally somebody had wandered in who had unsavory views about other races, if that person were to turn to somebody in the street and call them the N-word, who looks bad? It's not the black guy, is it? It's the person who used the name. When you use racial slurs or real, genuine examples of sexism, it's you that looks bad, not the object of your hatred. But racist is an allegation. It's not mere name-calling. You're inferring something about that person's moral character. You're accusing them of something. You're laying down a charge which must be answered. And in that way, at least, it's far worse. Especially when it's done entirely frivolously. Now, it seems to me that after years of tweeting things like masculinity so fragile, kill all white men, and I bathe in male tears, these bitter bitches can handle one solitary homosexual who calls them out on their bullshit, calls them out on their lies, calls them out on their conspiracy theories, their bullying, their bad breath, and their entirely unacceptable body mass indexes.
Since 2015, I have been receiving DMs, letters, used underwear, unused underwear, silk pillow shams with messages written in dried bodily fluids. Really, it's not as hot as it sounds. And it doesn't sound hot. Dead woodland creatures, syringes, and they've all come with the same message: visit Australia. So here I am. Australia's reputation for venomous creatures has not been exaggerated. I'm not speaking, of course, about spiders or snakes, which are beautiful examples, a crowning glory of evolution. No, you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Feminist!
Don't you think I might be allowed to deliver my own punchlines? I know it was a sort of obvious setup, but for God's sake, you're going to be asking to share my fee. The answer's no. I mean, of course, the otherworldly horrors of the ABC and its perma-tanned feminist hosts, especially the men. Male feminists. Male feminists. Now listen, post-Weinstein, the rest of the world has finally caught up to what I have always known, which is that when a man describes himself as a male feminist, you can start the clock on the rape charge. Now, the main two differences between venomous snakes and television feminists: one, snakes are beautiful, and two, they don't bother you unless you bother them. Unlike the busybody school moms of the social justice left, who are dedicated to telling the rest of us how we should live, what language we should use, and whether it's okay to laugh at how crap Aboriginal art is. Now, I can say this because I don't live here, but it really is shit. The Western Europeans who colonized Australia brought with them a heritage of culture, the richest in the history of human civilization, from the majesty of St. Peter's Basilica to the profundity and complexity of Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen, from the architecture to the architecture of... I've read a book or two.